In this video, we will show you how to replace your front flex hose on this Chevy Malibu. This is part of your front brakes, located behind your front wheel. A quick note, the process for replacing the flex hose on one side of the vehicle is the exact same thing as the other. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on to removing all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Inspect your lug nuts as you remove them, replace them as necessary. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, let's have a close look at our caliper. You're going to find that you have a bleeder screw. Typically there will be some sort of protective cover. Go ahead and remove that cover from the area. Now the next thing we're going to do is open up the bleeder screw using a 10mm. We want to pay attention for a little bit of fluid to come out of this area. If you see fluid coming out, that's a good sign. Go ahead and close this off. If you don't see any fluid coming out, you might have an issue where the bleeder screw is clogged in some way, and you definitely want to pay attention to that. See some fluid there. All right, that's a good sign. Let's close this off. Now that we know that that bleeder screw breaks free, let's take our collection bucket here. I'm going to open up the bleeder screw. With that open, we'll make sure that we have our collection receptacle handy. The next thing you need to do is make your way into the passenger compartment and hold down that brake pedal towards the floor with something such as a pry bar if necessary. You can rest it up against your seat. Now that we've done that, go ahead and carefully remove your receptacle here and close the bleeder screw. Make your way to where the flex hose connects onto your caliper. You'll find an 11mm headed banjo bolt. Move this mounting bolt, you will find that you have 2 gaskets, one on each side of the flex hose. Now looking closely here, I can see one on the inboard side right there where the threaded area is, and I can also see one on the outboard side. Let's pause here. We'll make our way up to where it connects onto the strut. For this area, we'll just lift this straight up and out of the bracket. A quick inspection of that bracket. We are reusing this. Now we can make our way to where the flex hose connects to the body of the vehicle. You're going to find that you have a small metallic clip up along the top here, which we will get around to removing, but before we do, just above that is where you're going to find you have your steel brake line and your fitting. Use some penetrant, let it do its job, and then go ahead and turn this fitting counterclockwise to remove the steel brake line from the flex hose. Let's get our wrench on here. Now when you turn this fitting, you want to pay attention to the fitting itself and that steel brake line. If you find that the line itself is twisting with the fitting, you need to go ahead and break the line free. By twisting the line, you could potentially cause a restriction, which is going to cause a braking issue. Now that we have this broken free, let's go ahead and completely unscrew that brake line from the flex hose, remove the clip, and remove the flex hose from the vehicle. Now we can take hold of that flex hose. We'll just give this a little wiggle and pull it down and out of here. You can leave that clip in place. There it is, friend. With that brake flex hose out of the way, let's pay attention to our brake line. You want to ensure that it is still in good, usable condition on the line area here, and of course the fitting. If it looks like the threading area is damaged in any way, go ahead and replace that fitting. This line looks fine, so let's continue looking at the caliper. For the caliper itself, we're paying attention to that mounting point. Carefully give it a close inspection. Make sure you don't see any rust or debris, and also make sure you don't see any of the previous existing gasket. This looks good as well, so let's continue on with our installation. Okay, let's get ready for the installation of our brand new flex hose. We'll take this and start with the upper end here. This is the portion that screws directly to that brake line. Pay attention along this area. You will find you have 2 small locating tabs. Those need to fit in the proper direction. We'll have those facing outboard. It should slide right into the bracket. If you have a hard time sliding it in, continue twisting until it does align properly. Once you've done that, continue on to starting in your brake line fitting by hand and snug it up. Right there's bottomed out. Let's just make sure it's nice and snug. Obviously, we don't want to break anything. Confirm that you are secured and that it's completely aligned and it's not cross-threaded in any way. Now let's make our way to the center of the flex hose where it connects onto the strut bracket. When you're looking at this, you will find you have a flat area. That flat area does face up. The rest of it is grooved all the way around. Let's get this in here. We'll line it up with the grooves. If you find it's hard to slide in there, you could lubricate it with something. Let's add a thin amount of lubricant to this bracket here. That'll help us slide this into place. Careful not to pinch your fingers in here. You could also try using some pliers, give it a little squeeze. Just be careful not to damage the flex hose in any way. Double check to make sure that flex hose is completely seated and it's not twisted in any way. Now we can make our way to where the flex hose connects onto the caliper. Now in this area, we want to make sure that we have our banjo bolt cleaned and inspected to ensure that there isn't any pre-existing gasket on there. It's common for one to be stuck along the base there. Once you're sure that it's clean, continue on with your 2 brand new gaskets. We'll take one of those gaskets and slide it right onto that banjo bolt. Now that we have that slid on there, let's take that banjo bolt with gasket and slide it right on through that flex hose. At this point, take your other brand new gasket and put it on the opposite side of the flex hose. At this point, we have one on each side of the flex hose. We'll take that and put it in position, start in that banjo bolt by hand so you're sure you are not cross-threading it. Let's tighten up that banjo bolt. Right there's where it feels as though it wanted to bottom out. We need to make sure each of these 2 gaskets is slightly crushed. We want to make sure that it's completely touching up against the flex hose and up against the caliper. Double check to make sure it's completely seated and follow that flex hose all the way up along the corner here and ensure it doesn't look like it's twisted, maybe like a pigtail of some sort. If it is, you might have an issue with brake restriction and that's going to be a braking issue. Make your way back up into the passenger compartment, remove the bar from your brake pedal. Make your way under the hood. We're looking for the master cylinder. Make sure that this area is clean before you go ahead and remove that cap. I can see that there's a whole bunch of debris in this area. You don't want anything falling inside of the brake fluid and contaminating it. Now, once you have that cleaned down, go ahead and take hold of that cap, turn it counterclockwise to remove it. A quick inspection of the seal right up along the top there, and we'll set that aside for now. Continue on with the manufacturer's specified fluid. You want to use .3 or .4 fluid. Make sure it's out of a clean container that was closed. Top off the brake fluid up to the maximum line here. If we have any drips, we'll just make sure we wipe them up. You don't want to get that on your paint. Close this temporarily. Now let's make our way back into the wheel well. Now the next thing we're going to need to do is bleed the brakes. It's a good idea to have some sort of reservoir, either a collection bucket or a receptacle like this one right here. Once you have that collection bucket handy, we can continue on with bleeding the brakes. In the passenger compartment, pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm. After that, we're going to make sure that we open up this bleeder screw and allow the brake system to gravity bleed. Gravity will draw the fluid down and come out of this fitting here down into your collection bucket. After that, we'll close this off, recheck the brake fluid, and then continue on with a manual bleed. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal and then release, please. Let's open this up. Now we're just watching to wait here. Like I said, we're waiting to gravity bleed this. Once I see a steady trickle of fluid coming out, we'll continue on. Look at all that air. Okay. Okay. Now that I have this closed, we're going to start manually bleeding the system. This is easiest if you have a second person inside of the passenger compartment. That person will pump up the brake pedal until it's nice and firm and hold it. Let me know they're holding it. While they're holding the brake pedal, I have my collection receptacle handy, and we're going to make sure we open up this bleeder screw. We're paying attention to the fluid coming out. We want to make sure that we only see fluid and no air bubbles. During this process, if you see any air bubbles, you need to continue the process, but make sure you keep checking that brake fluid just in case it runs low. Go ahead and pump up the brake. can see my fluid coming out here. All right, go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. Okay, that round I did not see any air come out, so let's continue doing this one more time just to confirm. Go ahead and pump, please. Okay. You can release, thank you. Let's just make sure all this goes into the receptacle. Go ahead and clean up your mess. Reinstall the cover. Once this dries, it's always a good idea to make sure that you pump up the brake pedal and confirm that you have no leaks at the bleeder screw and up at the far end of the flex hose where it connects onto the brake line. After that, make your way back up under the hood and double check your brake fluid. You're going to have to add a little bit under the hood. Go ahead and carefully open up that master cylinder one more time here. We'll be topping this off up to the maximum line. You can see it on either side of the master cylinder here. Once again, if you do spill any brake fluid, make sure you clean it off of your paint. Water works well for that. Now you don't need to go above that maximum there. It's a good idea to have a little bit of air up at the end there. Close this off, make sure it's nice and tight. Let's give this area one last quick look to make sure everything's tight as it needs to be. Once you've done so, continue on with your wheel. Start on all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts, bottom them out. Once you get the wheel back on the ground, we're going to torque each of these to 110 foot-pounds. Let's torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friends, we finished installing our flex hose. At this point, you can go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.